Hi there and welcome again to the Believable RPG series. Here we are at Verse Online, and today we're going to be talking about origin myths. So in the last couple of weeks, if you've been subscribing to this channel, and if not, do subscribe now. Make sure you get our weekly update for GMs and for world builders and writers and anybody else that's interested in fantasy. In the last couple of weeks, we have been looking at heroes and villains, these great archetypes of characters that we can introduce into our world. So we're going in a slightly different direction now. We're going to look at world building itself. And for the next few videos, we're going to be looking at the very foundational ideas of world building. So the idea of the creation myth, how your world comes about in the first place. Now, there are two approaches you can take with a creation myth in your world. You can have it as an actual statement of fact, how the world was created, or you can have it as a myth that the people in your world believe. It doesn't necessarily actually have to be verbatim. It doesn't have to be true at all. But if you imagine that across your fantasy world there will be innumerable cultures and peoples and civilizations all trying to make sense of this confusing business called creation and this strange experience called life, all just like the human beings in our world, desperate to try to understand how the world came about, and some making very good educated guesses and some being quite wide of the mark. The actual foundation of the world will involve perhaps either some kind of creating event, some kind of cosmic event that creates galaxies, universes, stars, planets, what have you, or some kind of creating figure, a deity perhaps, or some kind of master engineer or entire species of engineers. However you do it, the one kind of theme that we keep coming back to in this series is the idea of believability. Now, here's where things get kind of slightly muddled. If you're of the kind of scientific secular persuasion and the idea that a kind of that fantasy itself, which is inherently a work of imagination, must kind of be on some level believable, that's a tricky one to navigate, but it's quite straightforward. What you're setting down in your reality, and this is the kind of the foundational concept, the reality that you're building, you're setting down the parameters for what is real and what is not. You're setting down the parameters. If you're imagining, for example, a creator god, you're setting down the parameters for what that creator god can control. In most of the kind of the religious texts in our reality, on planet Earth, there are limits to what even supreme beings can control. They can't control, after the Garden of Eden, they can't really control the free will of human beings. Human beings must choose in sort of Judeo-Christian ideas, must choose to be redeemed, to be saved, and so the decision in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve to defy God and to embrace original sin and all that is that's a foundational moment in the Christian narrative. Now, you may or may not choose to deviate from any of the kind of the existing world religious ideas, from kind of Egyptian or Norse myths all the way through to Christianity or Hinduism or Islam or what have you, or you can draw from these, as inevitably people do, because we always draw from the culture around us. But what you probably do need to have is a foundational concept. If we're talking about a creator entity, a god or some vast creative kind of aspect of the universe, some nebula, some cloud that spews out realities, or some gigantic cosmic creature, some kind of reverse Galactus that actually creates universes instead of devouring them, you need to have a narrative sewn in there in the first place. Why did this entity create this world? Is it just that they couldn't abide mess? They came to a part of the universe, found lots of chaos, found lots of disorder, and thought, well, we'll create like the music of the spheres here, and put these lovely planets orbiting this star. Was it the result of some great battle between deities? Was the world that you created a cosmic accident, a byproduct of a war that the gods had to fight with one another? Was it part of a bargain between a god and a devil? Was it some other kind of aspect of some great cosmic narrative? In various Norse myths, for example, the world is the product of it's a rather grisly story, the part of the body of an older god that Odin and his brothers slew. In various myths, the earth is kind of an aspect of some kind of greater living thing, like some greater plant or tree, where the earth has kind of spun off and broken away. But often the stories of creation were simply how people tried to comprehend reality by looking at the objects around them. There might be different levels of creation myth in your civilizations. You might have more advanced civilizations where science or some aspect of science or alchemy is understood, and you start to get close to a more kind of Renaissance understanding of the universe, this kind of Copernican idea of the music of the spheres, or the idea pre-Galileo that the sun orbits the earth. There may be that, or there may be kind of more ancient understandings that clash with this. As you have these creation myths competing and different civilizations presenting different narratives as to the nature of the world, there is the possibility for conflict there. People, of course, fight over stories, and have done since the dawn of time. So this is why creation myths are important. Some civilizations may get closer to the truth. If you look at the creation myths in most religions, they're a sort of kind of limited version of the scientific understandings we have now. There is a kind of, in Christianity and Judaism, a moment of creation, and we now using powerful telescopes looking to the edges of the universe, there was indeed a moment of creation, which is a pretty lucky Bronze Age guess, I'd say. But the reality that we want to construct within our believable RPG is that is that creation itself may well have left clues around for people to consume, for people to create their understandings out of. So, why do we want to go to all this trouble? Surely we want our players just to go through dungeons and kill things. Well, obviously that's not what we're trying to work towards here. We're trying to give games depth and detail and riches and narrative, and help the players to inhabit this complex, moving, living world, where it's more simply, it's far beyond simply the dungeon dive, but the culture that surrounds players will deeply enrich their experience of the game, in theory, or maybe they just want the dungeon dive. If so, then you know what to do. And part of that culture is the foundational question of how did we get here in the first place? And if we can iron that out and have a powerful creational myth, then that's like a huge platform to build the rest of the world on. Anyway, I hope you found this useful, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks, all the best, bye.